It is Monday the 9th of September. Let's take a look at some crypto ahead of the US Open. Hope everybody's had a good weekend after a pretty nasty shakeout in a lot of markets last week. That is kind of the rule for September. The big news this month is going to be the Fed, and the Fed is not until the 18th of September, so we have got another week and a half to get through before we get the likely momentum for a long time in terms of timing, because Bitcoin is very cyclical. For quite a long time in terms of projected timing, I've had the 19th, between like the 13th and the 19th of September is a really good time for a trend change for Bitcoin or bottom. And so it may be that we have another week to wait until we kind of get this turn in, if you like. And we could, after a pretty nasty shakeout week last week, see some follow through and perhaps a retest of the lows or some consolidation before we can start to talk about a base. And of course, a lot of it is going to depend on the Fed. So we've got really very light news today, really nothing that's going to move the market at the moment. The midweek is when we're likely to see the most volatility, which is when we start getting inflation data for the US. We get CPI on Wednesday, PPI on Thursday. And on Thursday, we have the ECB, who are forecast to cut rates. So until then, it's just going to be pretty, back and fill. At the moment, we really are seeing some back and fill from the nasty drop that we had last week. Again, it's just not quite enough to say it's a bullish reversal yet, or the bottom is in, and so we need to be a little bit cautious. So let's start with Bitcoin. Let's start with spot Bitcoin. So I made a video on Friday night after the close. I talked about what we were looking for and what we would need to see for this to be bullish. And first off, we would need to see a close above 55,150, 50% back of this really nasty daily drop that we had on Friday. And then I think that we could come back up to 56,000 and above there. We can talk about a challenge and a back test of 60,000. For now, though, very typically for a weekend, we've had three little inside bars, three inside up, which would be a bearish candlestick pattern. And if we can't close on the daily above this 55,150, it's possible that we head lower from here and see a retest of these lows. So these are the two resistance zones that I am just looking at and see what we happen here. This is a very typical kind of toppy pattern where we make a marginal new high in Bitcoin, and I would not be surprised at all to see these lows retested. So I'm being a little bit cautious here. However, I do if we can extend here, if we can make a really bullish move, extend beyond this distance and beyond an equal measured move and above this 56,000 level, I do think that the volatility perhaps later in the week would give us some perhaps nice buying opportunities. But until then, I really want to see a bigger bottoming pattern. And so far, this just looks like a bounce in a downtrend, although we've bounced from very nice weekly moving averages with this weekly 50 moving average, which has previously been really good support and resistance for Bitcoin. If we look back, it's just not quite enough in terms of a momentum for me for a bottom yet. So what about short-term trades? I just want to take a quick look at Bitcoin futures, because sometimes the chart can be a little bit different. And if we take a look at this on our hourly moving averages, you can see, because we've been closed at the weekend, we have not recovered these hourly moving averages. We're still in a pretty clear downtrend, and it doesn't look quite so bullish. If we look at the moving averages, yes, we've bounced very nicely from weekly moving averages, but we are stuck underneath the daily 200 moving average, and it's not quite the bottoming pattern that we need to see yet. So I just want to say, be a little bit cautious about buying. There is news later in the week that could upset the apple cart, if you like. There are some things that are looking a little bit better than they were. One of them unfortunately is not yet ETH, but ETH is at a really interesting level, the weekly 200 moving average. My problem with ETH here is these fib, it's not enough of a bullish reversal. And also, although this is a pretty cool place for a fib pattern based on this high, if we take it from the lows here, from this low to this high like this, you can see we've bounced from this 61A. I do think that we have room certainly to do a bigger ABC pattern. I would not be surprised at all. So if this is our first swing, to see something like this here. The problem is it's just not quite, are we ready, you know, in terms of momentum, are we turning higher again? If we look at where we are on the daily in terms of candlestick patterns, again, we've had this really nasty down candlestick. We are halfway back, 3 little inside bars, not quite the bullish reversal that we need to see yet. If we push higher, if we close more than 50% up on this nasty down candle, yes, I do think we see more upside. Then I'd be buying pullbacks. I would look for 22,485 first, and then I would look for this equal measured move target up here at 2864, 2,864 is my target. Really nice support and resistance at 2864 as well. So what's another way? Using fibs to see if we're going up again. If we measure from this high to low, let's take this away. So 2864 is our target up here. If we measure from this high to low, the first thing that we need to do to be going up is close more than the 236 fib from this high to this low. That's at 2,309, and that's a little bit where we are sideways at on the daily here. So again, we could see a retest to these lows, we could see a bigger bottoming pattern until we close above 2,309 in ETH. It's not clear to me that we're going up, and so I'm not piling in. You can see this on the 4-hour. We're just a little bit choppy at this level, and it's a little bit important. So not so happy quite yet in this one. What about Solana, which has been in a really nice correction? Let me take off this. We look at Solana on the weekly. The support and resistance at this level that we're sitting at is really cool when you look left around 121, 122 in Solana, all the way back, you know, to these lows in 2021 here. Also the weekly 50 moving average, it's a really good place to potentially look for a bottoming pattern. But if we apply the same rules that we looked at in ETH, this most recent swing, are we going up again? This 236 fib is what we have to close above. And if we do that here in Solana, it's 130. And 130 has been where we have got knocked back. If we look at this here on a 4-hour, you can see this is the level, and this is the level where we kept getting sold over the weekend. 130. So unless we can recover 130, which is also the hourly 200 moving average, we are likely to see a bigger pullback before we have another turn. So not quite, you know, you can see we're coiling up pretty nicely here. I don't know which way this is going to go, but again, I think if we break down, we're going to need to look for a bigger bottoming pattern in Solana, and a close above 130 today would point to a bigger bounce. 136 would be next, which was where the daily 20 moving averages, but I think back to the middle, back to 153, and back to this 200 moving average most likely next after that. So 130 key level for Solana to recover if we're going to be going higher. Got a request to look at SEI. Let's start with this chart on the weekly. First off, this didn't have the really nasty down week that some of these had last week. Very nice little sideways inside bar. When I look at on the Coinbase chart at this one, we can see from the lows that we made in October 2023, we've bounced very nicely from an 886 fib level. We would need to hold above this 786 if we're going higher. The weekly moving averages are all still in a downtrend, and when I look in the daily here, we really are kind of, although we're flattening out and going sideways in some consolidation, short term we're stuck underneath this daily 20 moving average. And when I look at the rally that we made from the beginning of August, from this 5th of August low where everything made a low it looks like a very textbook equal measured move, and that just doesn't say bottom. Now, I know that quite often wave ones can be deceptive and they can have that appearance of a 3-wave measured move. And so really, unless we take out this high though, we're not going to know that. For me, it looks like not a bottom yet, and we could just as easily do another 3 waves down from here. The most common retrace, if this was an ABC, was a 786 fib. We're also not quite there yet. That's a little bit lower than where we are. So I have to say that this one, just like a lot of the altcoins, I'm not sure it's quite ready yet, and there is the risk that we had that little bit lower in this one. I do like shorter term though, this bottoming pattern, that kind of looks like every little dip is being bought. So if we apply the same rules, are we going up again? We need to get back above these 4-hour moving averages, break out from this sideways range, hold above these hourly moving averages, and again 236 fib retrace from this high on the 26th of August. We need to hold above 0.278, and if we look at this on the 4-hour, we're a little bit sideways here. Are we going to squeak higher here? If so, with this double bottom, we should at least get back to the middle of this range at 0.3. That would be our kind of double bottom target here if we can break out. But at the moment, we're stuck. Unless we break these highs, we're stuck. So, watching to see which way we go here. Short term, it does look like we're holding above this 236 fib, or at least attempting to. So perhaps the momentum of the US Open will tell us which way next. For me, I'm going to be a little bit cautious until then in SEI. But certainly, if we can hold above 0.278, we should make a run back to the middle here to 0.309, and at least maybe 0.32. Bigger picture above 0.32, I think that we can talk about a bigger bottom and a bigger bounce from here with the fib patterns, and potentially up to 0.62. But for now, this flat moving averages really do point to sideways range and choppy, not quite over the hump yet. But yeah, definitely a close above that daily 20, we can start talking about more upside, and I think it's worth buying a little. There are a few altcoins that are making some pretty nice bottoming patterns. Let's take a look at Aptos. We go to the weekly on Aptos. Here we are at these previous lows. I don't know if this is going to be a bottoming pattern or not, but certainly it looks like a higher low, which would point to another attempt. If we look at this on a daily, here we are on a sideways trend, and I'm wondering if this is trying to make a bigger inverted head and shoulders pattern. When I put fib retrace levels in from the March high this year, then it says that 7.9 would be my first target and the level that we really need to get above. And if we look left, 0.79 is pretty tough support and resistance. So I would say for this one, not really heading higher yet, but back above these daily flat moving averages in the middle, which are around here, around 6.2, 6.3, then above 6.3 we should look for 7.9 next. And yes, then we can perhaps talk about a bigger bottoming pattern, but they are pretty tough resistance at the moment. And again, maybe that we have to wait. The high tide is going to float everything next week. I am just being a little bit cautious this week. So yeah, I'm always interested in a higher low and another swing higher. Again, we could from here say, right, put our 236 fib on. We're holding above it. Looks pretty good at the moment. Got my eye on this one, Aptos. That's I think that has some potential. Render is another one that I look at quite often. Let me see where I've hidden render. It's here. Okay, this is where I lose my charts and it all goes a bit pear-shaped. What have I done with render? Oh, no, doesn't matter. We can start a new chart. Let's take a look. Hold on. Okay, so the main reason that I like the look of render here is I really do like the look of this three-wave correction that we've made in render. I think this has a lot of potential if we can get back above these weekly moving averages and this tricky level through the middle around 6.3. When I measure from this high to this low, it's a bit messy around this equal measured move, but certainly we're holding it, and we did have a look underneath it. And so for me, you know, back above 7.3 would say this three-wave correction is complete and we're on our way up again. And short term, we can say that this level through the middle at 6.2 and 7.3 are short-term resistance targets, if you like. But I do kind of like how the buyers are out in force. I like how this was the previous swing low, this low here, which is very common in a retrace, back to the previous wave 4, and I like how this had a really big 5-wave look. So for me, lots to look and like about render. And again, another one that looks like having back tested this equal measured move level, making a lower high. It's just not quite enough yet, is it, to be a bullish reversal, and we're still underneath these daily moving averages. So this is another one. And if we put our fib levels from low to high, we're still underneath it. But we can say, I think in terms of fib pattern rules, if we can close above 4.9, we should head back to the middle of this range and back to this 6.2 level and potentially higher back to the 200 moving average. And we can talk about bottom being in. So this is one that I have got my eye on. Again, we may take a little bit. Sometimes these bottoming patterns take quite a long time before we can reverse, but a close today or this week continuing above 4.94 for render looks like a pretty nice move. Now, in my last video I talked about SUI, and if we could get a bottoming pattern in SUI, here's SUI on the weekly, and we're a little bit sideways in this one. But last week was certainly pretty impressive, and we said last week that we really kind of needed to close above this support and resistance level through the middle here, 0.89, and start getting above some of these daily moving averages. And one of the reasons that I really like this when I look at this on the daily is this looks to me like 5 waves up and 3 waves back, or at least a big 3-wave correction, so another swing higher from here. Now, whenever you make this 3-wave corrective pattern, you kind of need to break the highs like this, and third touches of trend lines, quite often false breakouts. So if we draw this in like this and we line up these highs, we've had our little false breakout here. What I would like to see is a shallow pullback here and then a move higher for real if this is going up. If not, you know, sometimes when you have corrections, right, you make very nice simple corrections like this and you continue higher. But unfortunately, sometimes because the wave in the middle needs to be, it can be a little bit choppy, and you can do it like this. And so there is a risk that we see another swing lower before we go higher in here. But certainly SUI, I would like to see break out. And if we do my first target, just the corrective target is up here at 1.38 in SUI. If we can close and hold above this trend line at the moment, therefore I'm looking for a shallow pullback. And if I look at this short term, it looks like pretty nice 3 waves, but we're not quite ready to turn up higher again. But I'm watching this one for a nice 4-hour long entry, potentially in SUI, and another leg higher. Again, if we don't close above 0.96 or 0.98, we're not going up. It's not the setup that we're looking for. So these are just potentials at the moment. They haven't quite triggered yet, but this is what I'm watching out for some moves today.